You know, does that hold any tension? That last little stinger. I mean, is Malcolm Merlin dead? Why would they waste all this time setting up his potential for redemption, at least as a father, if if they're just going to kill him off, have him be shot by one of the most unlikable characters in the show? I don't know if the writers of this show actually did kill off Malcolm Merlin after spending this long to bring him back, then then really that will be one of the biggest cheats that they have ever done. But overall, this episode was pretty awesome. A little chaotic, and there were some flaws in logic, but again, they don't ruin the episode or anything. Basically, it picks up right where the last one left off, where Slade's army of steroid Mirakuru induced thugs are roaming around the city, basically trashing it. Um, and and Oliver and his team are trying to stop him. And it also marks the return of Sarah, and Quentin Lance, Detective Lance, is reinstated as a detective, and he he basically places himself and the entire police department under the command of the Arrow. And also we get the return of Malcolm Merlin, like I mentioned. Sarah comes back. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but it's just so welcome. Unfortunately, Thea does not die. Uh, but yeah, this again really ramped up the action, and it really sets things up very nicely for the season finale. I mean, this promises to be a a very memorable finale, even more memorable than the Undertaking in season one. I mean, this had some very powerfully emotional moments. This this had some very good twists in there. Some great lines being drawn in the sand. Some great fights being set up. A few characters actually get offed, or one character gets offed. So yeah, like I said, it's a very good setup while also functioning fairly well on its own. Probably not as much as it should because it is just kind of further set up for the finale. But that being said, it's also kind of the finale in its, or kind of the first part of the finale. I mean, I can't imagine the entire finale having set this conflict up as this big. I can't imagine the finale being any less than three parts, which this is the second part, and we're gonna have to wait another week for the actual finale. Oh my god. Uh, this this show is very good at drawing you in, at least in my opinion. But yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. The acting was top notch. It was a little cheesy at some points, specifically with Detective Lance and Laurel, and and to a certain degree Sarah. I mean, we had a moment between Laurel and Sarah, and she actually is named the Canary. Uh, yeah, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a little cheesy. Aside, along with Sarah rescuing some kid from a burning building, that plot felt a little irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, and I honestly think that could have waited until the end of the season. I think that could have waited until she was reminded of that by saving the city. But yeah, this is a very action-packed episode, and oddly enough, I wasn't bored by the action. They really knew how to find that balance between action and and trying to think of the word. They really seem to find a pretty good balance between very powerful action sequences and the more emotional scenes, like Oliver essentially not thinking he can stop Slade, or at least not at this point. I mean, he thinks it's too late, and of course he needs to be talked back up by Felicity. So yeah, with the Mirakuru cure now functioning as the MacGuffin, there opens up some new possibilities. There, for the first time, we actually have some semblance of renewed hope for actually stopping Slade and his guys. Now, what didn't work about this episode? Well, I suppose you could label these as kind of nitpicks, but but like I said, the cheesiness between the Lance family was a little. I don't know. It kind of took me out of it a bit. I still was not the least bit emotionally invested in Thea. I was in Merlin, in Malcolm Merlin. I mean, I like him, and I like John Barrowman as the character. I mean, I'm actually pretty glad they brought him back. I mean, I know I don't usually go for that, just bringing a character back who is dead just because he was popular or just because he was a good character. I usually object to that. I mean, it usually just seems like they're trying to exploit the popularity of the character, but they've actually given a narrative reason for Malcolm Merlin to come back in being the biological father of Thea, so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see if he's actually redeemed or not. And I know he tried to kill everyone in the glades, so he can't be completely redeemed, but he can at least prove himself to be he can at least protect the only person who actually means anything to him anymore, because he's got nothing left. So yeah, I'm interested to see where he's going to go from there. I'm glad they actually brought him back. I'm glad they didn't just introduce him earlier in the season and then just forget about him. So yeah, I liked him. I liked his scenes. I hated Thea. Big shock. Uh, I don't know. She just seems so petulant. Granted, it works better here than the last episode, but again, I just think she should at least hear the guy out after he saves her life. I don't think she should have cut him off mid sentence with bullets. Again, that's where they leave the episode off. So I'm not going to get all tense about that, because I don't think they would do that unless I don't think they would kill off Malcolm Merlin off screen like that. Although if they really wanted to draw in some viewers, they could do like a Jason Todd thing, like call this number if you want him to live, call that number if you want him to die. I don't know. I just don't know. The what else didn't work? Well, these were two things that I eventually just had to let go. A, you know where it picks up right after the last episode left off with Oliver and Laurel trapped underground. Well, for some reason, Oliver loses both his bow and his quiver. And the only one who is able to get to them is Laurel, who is on the other side of this wall of rubble. And the only way she can get out and reach Oliver is to activate his explosive arrow and shoot it at the debris. Okay. True, he does talk her through it, but I've seen people shoot. Okay. Immediately she picks up on it. She gets into position and she fires the arrow and she hits the debris straight in the center. She doesn't even fumble around getting the arrow on the string. She doesn't. It goes just as fast as when Oliver shoots an arrow. So I've seen people shoot a bow and arrow for the first time. You'd be lucky if you can get it to actually go anywhere, much less actually go where you want it to go. And this is a big arrow too. I mean, this is like 2 feet long. It's like a little mini harpoon. It's metallic, and it has an explosive attached near the head. So yeah, I don't think she's going to be this accurate with this arrow, especially not shooting it from a bow. I mean, if it was a crossbow, maybe, but the longbow that Oliver has, I don't think so. So I just had to let that go. I mean, it was a biting nitpick for me, and I was kind of questioning, how can she do that? Another thing I was kind of questioning was Isabel Rochef, who has since taken up the mantle of the Ravager. I know she has been trained by Slade Wilson, but when have we ever seen her use swords? I mean, we saw her fight Oliver briefly in an earlier episode, but when have we ever gotten any indication that she knows how to use a sword, much less these dual knife things that she has? I mean, good God, they're not really knives, they're more like katanas, whatever. I would have at least liked to have some prior setup to this. I mean, just all of a sudden she knows how to use these things. I would have liked to have seen, Slade taught me to use these things, or maybe Slade actually training her, following that old rule of show, don't tell. I don't know. Again, I just had to let that go because it's Ravager, and because comics, she has to match the comic book character now, so she's instantly a master. She's instantly a master swordswoman. And the final little thing that bothered me, and this actually isn't a nitpick, or at least not in my opinion. It's actually a problem. It's actually a little hole in the writing. Slade Wilson betrays Sebastian Blood. Slade Wilson says, "You know what? I'm not gonna stop laying siege to this city. I'm gonna reduce this. I'm gonna raise this city to the ground. I'm going to reduce it to rubble. I'm gonna make it into a cemetery." And Sebastian Blood looks so surprised. Not only has Oliver told him that Slade Wilson would betray him, but but also he's a crazy guy with an eye patch who's breeding an army of super soldiers. When did you ever think that you had any cards to hold against this guy? In what scenario do you come out on top? Do you just trust this guy to honor his word? I don't know. That was a problem with the Sebastian Blood character. It actually made him out to be a little bit too gullible. And another thing that actually kind of weakened Slade Wilson's character is Sebastian takes the Mirakuru cure that Slade previously swiped out from underneath Oliver. Slade Wilson has the Mirakuru cure in his office, and after telling Sebastian Blood that he's not going to honor their arrangement, Sebastian Blood is able to steal the Mirakuru cure off screen, and he phones Oliver and says, "I have the Mirakuru cure. Come get it. I want to save the city now." So I actually think, Slade knows that this guy is not going to remain loyal to him any longer. A, why does he even keep him in close proximity with him? B, what's to stop him from killing Brother Blood? And C, why don't you actually, I don't know, leave the suitcase full of the cure, I don't know, guarded? I mean, maybe have Isabel Rochev just guard it. It just was a very idiotic moment for an otherwise pretty smart character. So aside from those little things that bugged me, this again was a very accomplished episode. Because we got to see the shit hit the proverbial fan, as it were. The city is under siege. The stakes are raised. This show has raised the stakes before, but never to this level. I mean, I'm constantly impressed at how they keep topping themselves. And it never becomes too much. It never becomes like, okay, this is getting a little this is a little too over the top now. It is over the top at several points, but again, they really know how to balance that with more character driven moments. They really know how to balance the action. They know how to balance the narrative. And yeah, there are narrative problems in this episode, but it's not really anything that destroys it, because this whole episode is just such a rush. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't kind of chaotic with the constant shifts in scenes between characters. Like we'll be following Oliver, we'll be following Thea, then we'll go over to Laurel and Sarah, then we'll go over to Slade Wilson, then we'll go back to Oliver, then we'll go back to Laurel and Sarah. But that's kind of the point, and it's not like trying to think. I'm trying to think. It's all having to do with one situation, and the fact that we have already gotten to know these characters so well, it actually feels rather justified to focus on all of them rather than just focus on the core members of Oliver's team. I mean, given we've gotten to know Detective Lance, that we've gotten to know Sarah, we've gotten to know Laurel. For better or worse, we've gotten to know Thea. And isn't it weird? I mean, Laurel, she's not exactly one of my favorite characters, but at this point, she's a lot more likable than Thea. And I feel bad saying that, because Thea has been through a lot, but in all honesty, Thea has undertaken the mantle of the most unlikable character in the show, in my opinion. I mean, she's replaced Laurel in that category. But I'm getting sidetracked. This is a very accomplished episode. Again, sets things up very, very beautifully for the season finale. Even the flashback scenes are integrated well. I mean, the flashbacks are really coming to a head. I mean, the conflict between Oliver and Slade on the island, and how they're both very different from how they are now. I mean, true, the conflict isn't quite as large scale as having the entire city as their battlefield, but you really feel like things are ramping up in both time periods, both 5 years ago and present time. So yeah, I really like this episode. Yeah, there were problems in the script. It actually kind of weakened a few of the characters, but again, it was suitably emotional for several of them, namely Felicity, Oliver, even Diggle's got some good lines. Which, that's one recurring problem in these more recent episodes, is that Diggle isn't really given much to do, and I'm actually kind of backing down on my previous mixed review of, what was it, the Suicide Squad episode, which was very Diggle centric, because honestly, that, in retrospective, that actually is kind of a refreshing episode, believe it or not, because we finally get to give Diggle some material. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked again. I sound like a broken record at this point. I'm talking in circles. This was a very good episode. Great acting, great action. Some of the wide shots of the city burning, it doesn't really look as spectacular as something like as something that's movie quality with a movie budget. But for a TV show, this has always been surprisingly cinematic, and as always, or even more than usual, I'm really looking forward to how it all ends. I mean, what's going to happen? Are they going to kill off Slade Wilson? Are they going to kill off Malcolm Merlyn? I hope they don't. I hope they don't kill off Slade Wilson either, at least not in the present, because obviously we know what's going to happen to him in the flashback. So there's slightly less tension there. But also in the flashbacks, I'm interested to see how Sarah gets separated from Oliver and eventually joins the League of Assassins. So, again, this is all just speculation at this point, but I have to know how they tie all this together for the second season, because this second season has just been such a rush overall. It is far superior, in my opinion, to the first season. And, yeah, was this episode chaotic? Yeah. Did it... But not only did Did the chaos feel justified given what was going on and given how much buildup we've had up to this point? But also, it never forgets to put the characters at the forefront. The action never eclipses the characters and what they are going through. So yeah, really good episode, really good setup, while at the same time, really good partial payoff in this big, large scale conflict. Again, I don't really know. I don't really know how to justify Amanda Waller and her little ultimatum at the end of the episode, but again, we'll see where that goes. I'm not really completely on board with how they're portraying Amanda Waller in this show, but yeah, we'll just see what happens.